In both stories, what was left undone became as destructive as what was done wrong. In today's world, fatherhood is often confused, downplayed, or even abandoned with tragic repercussions. And Scripture consistently calls fathers to a higher standard, not perfection, but direction, because the direction of a father's life sets the course for his family, for his children, and eventually even for his community. And perhaps some fathers that are watching right now may be asking themselves, where did I go wrong? Now, typically in my videos, I always try to have a practical application, or in the case of Equipped Plus, the full gospel in 1 year, check it out here on YouTube or even on any podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc. I also have reflection. So I want to address some issues in the light of my fatherhood. I had a good chat last week with my daughter on Father's Day, and some poignant things transpire. I did not spend enough one-on-one time with her to create memories like I did with my son. And I think probably for us father, it is easier to gravitate towards our boys, especially when they share the same passion. And in my case, that is spearfishing. However, that doesn't mean that I value one relationship more than the other, or I value them differently. But as I look at my past trips with Isabella and the intentional time that I spent with her, without distraction, without interruptions, or without other priorities, I have to recognize that the scale is definitely tilted toward Marco. So I have to get to work a lot, roll up my sleeves to make up for lost time. I already rolled up my sleeves right now. But I would like to look at two biblical examples, two biblical characters that I found intriguing. Eli and Samuel, two of Israel's most respected spiritual leaders. Both had sons who went astray. One father tolerated his son's wickedness and basically remained passive. And the other apparently led well, but also saw failure in his own household. In both stories, what was left undone became as destructive as what was done wrong. And guys, this isn't just about ancient priests or prophets. It's about us today. What happens when discipline is avoided and when omission replaces intentionality in our homes. By the way, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and leave comments below regarding what you wish you would have done differently or what worked, in your parenting style. So why do parents avoid applying consequences to curb a wrong behavior? Perhaps because they want to be liked, or they feel too tired to follow through, or they simply want peace within the family. And there are more issues like ignorance, poor upbringing, dysfunctionality, but let's look at what happened to those two biblical characters that I mentioned above. Now, we know that discipline without consequences rarely leads to change. We call it the threatening, repeating parent, right? The one that say, oh, if you do it one more time, and nothing ever happens. So how could a priest like Eli not know that? And how could a prophet, Samuel, raised by Eli, miss it altogether? Eli was a priest in the line of Aaron who served during the time of the judges in the city of Shiloh, where the Ark of the Covenant was kept. A little side note, this tabernacle, also referred to as a temple, served as the central sanctuary for the Israelites during the period of the judges, right after the conquest of Canaan and right before the temple of Jerusalem was actually built. And this is the temple that the Samaritans claimed over the temple in Jerusalem. You might remember the story of Jesus encountering the Samaritan woman, and that was actually discussed in their conversation. Now back to Eli. He had two wicked sons, Hophni and Phinehas, who served in the tabernacle. Now, why are they wicked? Because they repeatedly disregarded the law of Moses by keeping the raw meat brought for animal sacrifice even before sacrificing the fat to the Lord. They also used their position to manipulate the woman who served at the tabernacle in order to have sex with them. So they didn't just break rules, they actually mocked sacred responsibilities for personal gains and for pleasure. So their conduct was serious, was a serious violation of both God's law and the sanctity of the tabernacle. Eli, though devoted to his calling as a priest, was very lousy at being a parent. He knew about his son's wickedness, and yet he did not rebuke or discipline them to stop their behavior, which, by the way, was also well known among the community. God warned Eli through a man of God of his son's death that would occur on the same day. He also told him about the family priestly line ending with him. And yet Eli did not do anything. And because of this failure, God reveals to Samuel, Eli's understudy basically, who was still a child, of the coming judgment. In 1 Samuel 3:13 we read, I have told him that I'm about to punish his house forever, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. So Eli put his defiant sons above God, and also got scolded. In 1 Samuel 2:29 we read, why then do you scorn my sacrifices and honor your sons above me? Eli should have removed them from their duties. Instead, he honored family over faithfulness. So his sin wasn't action, it was omission. He was a passive leader. And passivity in leadership is not neutral, it's destructive. Also in 1 Samuel 2:12 we read, they did not know the Lord. Now, does this mean that Eli failed in training them in the way that they should go? As we read in Proverbs 22:6. Though raised in a holy environment, their hearts were completely unmoved by the very God they pretended to serve. And thus we learn that proximity to sacred things doesn't produce holiness. Personal faith does. And we as parents are called to model and to teach that. Now, you would think that Samuel, growing under Eli and probably witnessing the horrifying results of poor parenting, would be extra careful in not repeating the same mistakes. However, like Eli, Samuel's two sons, Joel and Abijah, were also wicked. You read in 1 Samuel 8:3, yet his sons did not walk in his ways, but turned aside after gain. They took bribes and perverted justice. Now, at least we notice here that Samuel was above reproach, since we read that his kids did not walk in his ways. However, they still became corrupted to the point that the elders of Israel did not want them to rule above them and asked for a king instead. Now, there is no evidence to suggest that Samuel was a bad father and that led to his son's evil ways. However, we could speculate. We could speculate that Samuel devoted so much time to his ministry, including the traveling to different places, that was consistent and extensive. And perhaps he did not spend enough time home to disciple his own sons properly. His ministry basically may have taken priority in his life to the point that his family suffered for it. And we also recognize that sometimes, though, children drift with no fault to their parents. Some of the godliest people and pastors or missionaries have had rebellious children. Other times we witness the same discipline style in a family, and you see that one child absorbs the truth while the other one rejects them. Basically, we're born totally depraved with the rebellious sin nature toward God. None is born righteous. And our response when God calls will determine if we choose to ultimately live for God or for ourselves. And thankfully, God is a good father that knows and loves his children and can bring a child into his family under the worst of circumstances. But that does not relieve us of our responsibilities. Fathers are not perfect, but they're called to pursue faithfulness. Thank you for listening. Love you. Lord willing, we'll catch you next week. Ciao.